Before you take Ozempic, or before someone you love does, there are 5 things you need to know. Not side effects buried in a pamphlet, not things your doctor glossed over in a 5-minute appointment. Real things. Things that change the decision. Ozempic, the brand name for a drug called semaglutide, was originally designed for people with type 2 diabetes. It works by mimicking a hormone in your body called GLP-1. That hormone tells your brain you're full and slows down how quickly food moves through your stomach. Then, something unexpected happened. Doctors started noticing their diabetic patients were losing weight. Not a little weight, significant weight. And word got out. The internet caught fire. Celebrities started whispering about it. TikTok exploded. Suddenly, everyone wanted access to a drug that had been sitting quietly in diabetes clinics for years. Prescriptions for off-label weight loss use tripled in a single year. The company that makes it, Novo Nordisk, became the most valuable company in all of Europe, with a market value topping $600 billion. And here's the part nobody talks about enough. Diabetic patients, the people this drug was actually designed to help, started struggling to get it because everyone else was using their supply. That tension is still happening right now, and it tells you something important about how we got here. I spent a long time going through the clinical trial data, the medical journals, and the stories of real people who have been on this drug. And I kept finding the same things. Important things. Things that kept not making it into the mainstream coverage. So in this video, I'm walking you through 5 of them. The truth about what the weight loss actually is, and why it matters more than the number on the scale. What happens to your body when you stop taking it? A side effect that made it into the FDA's most serious warning category. A cosmetic consequence that plastic surgeons are now calling an epidemic. And finally, the specific group of people who carry the most risk, and that group is much larger than most people realize. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to have a much clearer picture than anything a 30-second advert is going to give you. Let's start with the weight loss itself. Because it's real, people do lose weight on Ozempic. That part is not in dispute, but here's what a lot of people don't realize. A significant portion of that weight isn't fat, it's muscle. Studies looking at people on semaglutide have found that somewhere between a third and nearly half of the total weight lost can come from lean muscle mass, not body fat, and that distinction matters enormously. Muscle isn't just something you have for the gym. Your muscles are metabolically active tissue. They burn calories even when you're resting. They regulate your blood sugar. They protect your joints. They keep you functional and strong as you get older. Lose a meaningful amount of it, and you're not just changing how you look, you're changing how your body works at a fundamental level. The number on the scale goes down, but if a large chunk of what you lost was muscle, your metabolic health may not have improved the way you assumed it did. In some cases, people can end up with a lower weight, but a worse metabolic profile than when they started. Now, there is something you can do about this. The research is fairly clear that combining this medication with resistance training and adequate protein intake significantly reduces the muscle loss. That's a real practical lever you have, but it requires knowing the risk exists in the first place, and that's information that doesn't always make it into the conversation before someone starts the prescription. Truth number 2 is one that started showing up in plastic surgery waiting rooms before it made it into any mainstream health reporting. And honestly, when I first came across it, I had to read it twice. Plastic surgeons across the country started noticing something unusual. Patients were coming in not for weight-related procedures, but because of what rapid weight loss had done to their faces. There's now a term for it that's being used in cosmetic medicine circles. They're calling it Ozempic face. When you lose weight quickly, especially a large amount in a short time, your body loses fat from everywhere, including your face. And facial fat, it turns out, is one of the main things that keeps a face looking youthful. The volume under your skin is what creates that smooth, full appearance. Lose it too fast, and the skin doesn't have time to contract properly. You end up with hollowed cheeks, a gaunt appearance around the eyes, and skin that looks looser than it did before. Cosmetic surgeons are reporting a significant increase in patients coming in specifically to address this. Fillers, fat grafting, skin tightening procedures, all driven by the same cause: rapid, drug-assisted weight loss that the face wasn't ready for. Here's the part that makes this more than just a cosmetic concern. For a lot of people, the reason they wanted to lose weight in the first place was partly about how they looked and felt. And the cruel irony of Ozempic face is that you can end up thinner, technically hitting your goal, and simultaneously looking noticeably older than you did before you started. That's not to say this happens to everyone. It depends on how much weight you lose, how fast, your age, and your skin's natural elasticity. But it's documented, it's real, and it's something worth factoring in, especially if you're younger and losing weight primarily for aesthetic reasons. Coming up. Truth number 3. And this one is probably the most important one financially, because it has to do with what happens the day you decide to stop. Truth number 3 is the one that I think has the biggest financial and emotional impact, because it answers a question that most people don't think to ask before they start. What happens when you stop? Here's what the research shows. When people stop taking semaglutide, most of the weight comes back. A major study published in a leading diabetes and obesity journal tracked patients after they stopped the medication. Within 12 months, they had regained roughly 2/3 of the weight they had lost. Within a few years, most participants were back close to where they started. And here's the reason why, and it's important to understand this. Ozempic doesn't retrain your hunger. It doesn't reset your relationship with food or fix the underlying habits or biology that led to weight gain in the first place. What it does is chemically suppress the hunger signals coming from your gut. The moment the drug leaves your system, those signals come back. And for a lot of people, they come back harder than before, because the body has been in a kind of suppressed state and it wants to recover. Your body doesn't know you were taking a medication. It thinks it was being underfed, and it responds accordingly. This doesn't mean Ozempic doesn't work. It clearly does, for as long as you're taking it. But it does mean that for a large number of people, this isn't a course of treatment with an end date. It's closer to a lifelong commitment, like blood pressure medication or a thyroid prescription. Something you stay on indefinitely to maintain the effect. That's a decision worth making consciously, with full information. Not something you fall into because the first few months went well. And that brings me to something I want to ask you directly. Truth number 4 is about what's in the fine print, and I mean that literally. Every Ozempic prescription comes with a black box warning. If you're not familiar with that term, a black box warning is the strongest safety label the FDA puts on a medication. It's reserved for serious or life-threatening risks. And the one on Ozempic's label is about thyroid cancer. Specifically, a rare type called medullary thyroid carcinoma. Now, here's the important nuance, and I want to be careful to get this right. The most significant data pointing to this risk came from animal studies, not from human clinical trials. The direct link in humans hasn't been definitively established, but the FDA decided the signal was strong enough to warrant the highest level of warning they have. That's not nothing. That's regulators saying, we don't know the full picture yet, and we want every person who takes this drug to be aware of it. Beyond the thyroid warning, the clinical data also documents real risks of pancreatitis, inflammation of the pancreas, gallbladder disease, and a condition called gastroparesis, where the stomach's ability to move food through slows down significantly. For most people on the drug, these are rare. But rare doesn't mean zero, and the people who experience them aren't statistics. They're going through something serious. There's also been an increase in reports of vision changes and eye-related complications in people on GLP-1 medications, something researchers are still actively studying. None of this means the drug is dangerous for everyone. Risk always has to be weighed against benefit. For someone with severe obesity and type 2 diabetes, The calculus may look very different than for someone who wants to lose 15 pounds before a vacation, but every person deserves to make that calculation with the full picture in front of them, not just the version the marketing wants you to see. And that brings us to truth number 5. The one I said at the start would surprise you, because it's not just about a medical condition or a lab result. It's about a group of people, a very large group, for whom the risks of this drug almost certainly outweigh the benefits. And there's a good chance someone watching this right now is in that group. Some of this is medical and straightforward. People with a personal or family history of medullary thyroid carcinoma, or a condition called multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Those are listed as direct contraindications. The drug should not be used. People with a history of pancreatitis are also in a higher risk category and need a very careful conversation with their doctor before going anywhere near it. And anyone who is pregnant, planning to become pregnant, or breastfeeding should not take it. The effects on fetal development are not fully understood, and the guidance from medical bodies is clear on this. But the group I want to talk about, the larger one, is people who are using Ozempic as a first resort rather than a last one. People who haven't genuinely worked through the lifestyle fundamentals first, not because it's a moral failing, not because they're lazy or lack willpower, but because the evidence strongly suggests that people who build real, sustainable habits alongside the medication or before it do significantly better long-term than those who rely on the drug alone. When you skip the foundational work, you miss the thing that actually stays with you after the prescription ends. And given everything we now know about the rebound effect, what happens after the prescription ends matters enormously. That's the group this drug is most likely to let down. Not because it doesn't work, it does, but because the expectation management is off. The conversation before the prescription isn't honest enough about what the drug can and can't do on its own. You deserve to know that before you made the decision. And now you do. I want to be honest with you about something before we wrap up. Everything I've shared in this video is real. The risks are documented, the concerns are legitimate, but Ozempic is also genuinely helping people. For individuals living with severe obesity, where the health consequences are serious and the conventional approaches haven't worked, the clinical trials show real, meaningful benefits. Reduced risk of heart attack and stroke, better blood sugar control, weight loss significant enough to take pressure off joints, improve sleep apnea, lower inflammation. These are not small things. For the right person, this medication can genuinely change the trajectory of their health. The problem was never the drug existing. The problem is the gap between what the drug actually is and what the culture has turned it into. A shortcut, a celebrity secret, something to ask your doctor about because you saw it trending. That version of the story leaves out everything we talked about today, and that's what has to change. If you're considering Ozempic, or if someone you care about is, the conversation with your doctor needs to be a real one, not a 5-minute tick box at the end of an appointment. Ask about the muscle loss. Ask about what happens if you stop. Ask whether your specific history puts you in a higher risk category. Ask whether you've genuinely exhausted other options first, or whether this is the right tool for where you actually are. You're allowed to ask all of that. You're entitled to all of that information. And a good doctor will welcome those questions rather than rush past them. If this video gave you something your doctor's appointment didn't, share it. Put it in front of someone who's about to make this decision without the full picture. That's genuinely the most useful thing you can do with it. I'm glad you stayed to the end. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching True Health Tales. If this helped you, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next truth.